What's going on,
Hello,
everyone?
welcome back
to
to
Hey everyone, welcome to Watch Mojo.
Ben. We're gonna get sued now.
That's
Max,
okay. We
Max,
don't
you
make
said you
money from
wanted
this.
chaos at the top.
And that meets that was very well done.
What's going on, guys? We have an extra unqualified film bro today because he's more unqualified than the rest of us.
I have
You
zero
guys,
qualifications.
you guys know him from Broken Chess. We know him from real life. He looks like if Thor Odin's son was as malnourished as Gore the God Butcher. Aidan Gorrell.
Oh my word.
Jesus Christ.
George is coming in hot.
It's his first time on and he's getting side shots from George just in the intro.
Hi, Aidan. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. I'd say it's good to be here, but I'm not sure. True.
Oh, we're going back and forth the whole time. Never a dull moment on Unqualified Film Bros.
Amen.
So we're talking about what we promised we'd talk about this week. Last week, we're talking about Thor: Love and Thunder, the latest and greatest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I want to start with Ben tonight because I noticed that you logged it on Letterboxd with a review of 4 stars, and now your rating of the film is 4.5. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, I put it at 4 and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It's a Marvel film and I rate them in their own quality. So I gave it 4.5.
4.5 from
So
Ben.
I enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun movie. I didn't really have many complaints for the film. I mean, I know plenty of other people had complaints, but for me, it was a fun, succinct plot. You just sort of had fun, and I thought that was fine. But I also thought there was like a deeper level to it. But I mean, just to go see a Marvel film, if it's fun, I think that's a good film. I can't say the same for some other Marvel films like Internals. So
I really thought you were going Guardians 2 there.
I did too.
I shit on Guardians a lot. I got Guardians Volume 2, but it's not that terrible. Like there are some moments of levity.
It's a thing that is purely because it's a film I like, so therefore you
Yeah.
almost hate it.
But also I think Volume 2 I disliked mainly because Volume 1 was so good. And I felt like Volume 2 was constrained from Volume 1 was really open. So that's my complaint. But this is a Thor review. We don't have to go over Guardians.
Well, it's funny.
Somehow we always fucking bring up
However,
Guardians
they do have a similar
every
theme.
time.
The soundtrack is really intertwined here. All these Guns N' Roses songs actually feed into the plot pretty well.
Yeah, just while we're speaking about Guardians 2, since it came up so organically.
Fuck you.
Declan, calm down.
Obviously, we know it's the worst, but
Ben, come on. This film draws a lot of comparison to Guardians 2 because it does not add a whole lot to the greater story of the MCU. Other than advancing Thor's arc, which the first 2 Thor films kind of did, I guess. Ragnarok was very much setting up Infinity War. And Guardians 2 is really just, let's get the Guardians back on the big screen. Let's throw them on another adventure. There's no real, you're not seeing an Infinity Stone like you did in the first Guardians movie. There's no ties to, Thanos and Ronan that you saw in the first movie. Guardians 2 is very isolated. And I think, it gets a bad rap from 3 of us. But it has its flaws. And Thor: Love and Thunder, I didn't feel the same flaws stemming from the fact that it's so disconnected from the MCU. I really just enjoyed it because I love Taika Waititi as a director. I love Chris Hemsworth's, refreshed take on Thor since Ragnarok. Christian Bale is the best damn actor in the movie.
By far.
It's it's a great movie. I don't feel ashamed saying that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And George, to your point on the similarities between Guardians 2 and Love and Thunder, in that there is criticism that it doesn't connect, and at least at this point, to the larger MCU in ways that we're used to in the past. But I think part of the issue with Guardians 2 is that we were so accustomed to having like a very tangible aspect of the Infinity Stones to be like, oh, we should be looking for an Infinity Stone, or we should be looking for something to do with Thanos, or, you know, like the big bad that we know is coming at that point. But in phase 4 at this point, it's all kind of disjointed. It's not
so disjointed.
It's not the same sort of interwoven story that felt so methodical and, you know, well thought out and planned. Not that these movies and TV shows aren't methodical in their own right, but just they're not connected in the same way. And I think that actually kind of made it easier for me to enjoy this film more, because I didn't go in expecting it to necessarily or have to connect to the MCU in the future. I kind of was just like, all right, it's going to be a fun ride and we're going to get good performances. If it connects, great. If it doesn't, it's not as big of a deal at this point right now than it would have been if I was still used to, you know, phases 1 through 3 of the MCU.
Let me build on that real quick, because I did expect a greater MCU tie-in, maybe not from Gore, maybe not from, you know, Thor and the Guardians and Sif and Jane Foster and Valkyrie. I really thought Loki was going to show up. I thought Loki from the TV show was going to, you know, after the events of Loki season 1, go looking for his brother for help. And I thought at least that would be a credit scene. Maybe not a part of the movie.
I don't think that would make much sense.
Because he's been in the first 3 movies. I thought he would show up.
I don't think that would make much sense, just because they clearly have their own plans for Loki season 2. Having him tie in, even like post credits, supposed to tease something, right? So you can't really tease. No, you could tease like Loki season 2, but that would be kind of weird.
This one really just teases Thor 5, which hasn't even been announced yet.
Well, I did want to like riff on. So yes, it doesn't contain Infinity Stones, but like it does have a lot of expansion. And a lot of these films, I think, do expand the universe quite a bit. I mean, we're getting to see it, like the Living Tribunal. In this film, we see statues of the Living Tribunal. Multiverse of Madness, we see the Living Tribunal. We also see Eternity, which is like the living embodiment of the universe. So
if Eternity is a thing, if Eternity is a thing and Thor knew about it, why did they need to do the time heist in Endgame?
Not wrong. Not a valid question.
Or why
I'm not sure that.
What was that, Aidan?
Why didn't Thanos go to Eternity and ask for half the universe to be wiped out that way?
Well,
because aliens like collecting stones.
I mean, who doesn't like collecting stones?
I don't know what the exact rules are, but you know, it's not a comic book run, so I assume that's fine. Yeah, I just like to finish that out. Like, yeah, I think it does build out a lot of the MCU, because yeah, the Infinity Stones are done. We're building out like other universes and like the cosmic makeups of the universe, you know, the Celestials, all of the gods, the Necrosword, which is like has big comic book tie-ins, but they can't use it because it's Sony.
But they used it and then they destroyed it, and so there's not going to be a symbiote tie for the Necrosword.
Well, I wonder what they'll do with it, because there are plenty of things they can do with it. When there's another Cursed Blade and the Ebony Blade that they're gonna bring up
with the Black Knight.
Plenty of things that they can do, even if they can't use the symbiotes. There are like a million different universe, like big bads, Chaos King, Mephisto. Who cares? Like,
we're not getting Mephisto. We're never getting Mephisto. Ever since WandaVision, we've been thinking Mephisto. He's not coming.
Ghost Rider is coming. Ghost Rider is going to bring Mephisto. There's no way that it doesn't.
So I will say, Declan. Sorry, I know you were just about to speak, but I want to preface it a little bit. Your Letterboxd review. Oh yeah. You said you were film. I want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you're talking about feeling that the film expanded the universe. I honestly felt, now it could be maybe like, no, I honestly felt a little let down by the film, and like I felt like for some reason, like maybe it was because of people talking about like it feeling too formulaic. Like there was a part of me that couldn't get over the fact that it's like, here you have Christian Bale giving like this, amazing performance. But I know it's going to go away after this film. Like he's not going to reappear. And I couldn't help but think like throughout the film, it's like, oh man, I wonder if all these elements are going to be brought up and then never mentioned again, or all resolved by the end. What I'm trying to say is I kind of felt let down given the sheer amount of talent. I wish it felt more unique, like structure wise and story wise. I feel like there were like things they did that were unique and what I like best, but I feel like the things that brought it down were like the parts that felt so similar to other elements of the MCU. It's like I like, given that like Taika Waititi's directing it and you got just this amazing cast, I think more should have been done. I almost wish it was more like Multiverse of Madness rather than or Thor Ragnarok rather than like Thor the Dark World. I mean that's too far to compare to the Dark World.
I think you bring up a good point there in that Thor's characterization, and a lot of this is brought on by the fact that Jane Foster is back. Thor's characterization is largely an amalgamation of the funny guy we saw in Ragnarok and Infinity War and Endgame, but also he's, and I'm going to quote How I Met Your Mother here because it's the best word I have for it, revertigo, where you go back to your personality you had when you knew someone you're hanging out with. He's back in with Jane for this whole movie. And so you're seeing Thor, the Dark World versions of Thor, even the Avengers and Age of Ultron. That sort of characterization is mixed in with the Thor that has been refreshed by the Russos and by Taika Waititi. So it's sort of this strange almost way of bringing the character forward. And Hemsworth, I mean, he does a great job with it. I'm not complaining. He's fantastic in the role. He's played this character more times than I think anyone else has played any role in the MCU by this point. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Tom Hiddleston is Loki, and Chris Evans is Steve Rogers, but
he's gone.
Still, he's up there, and he's it's a little late to say he's settled into the role because he did that years ago, but he's clearly taking this character not so much in the direction that I expected through this film, but it's Thor will return.
It's a weird thing where the first two Thor movies are very much, they're pretty comic book accurate. Like Thor's pretty straight. Like he's not comedic at all, really. It's comedic because he's so straight and the other people are normal, I guess.
The fish out of water element of the first movie.
But I think Taika Waititi's take is more comedic and more funny, but there is that element where like, yeah, he did revert him. Like he got a lot stupider from the second to third movie. But I cannot really criticize too much of that because he is sort of like same level and he does evolve to a certain degree. I mean, he is sort of just a dumb character, but like that's how he's written. And I think that's fine because of who he is. And that it works for the types of things Taika has done, and even for the Avengers stuff, it works. But I do think he has some evolution here where like he does clearly, the first Taika movie, Ragnarok, deals with him losing his hammer, sort of figuring out who he is, and also dealing with like this really terrible past of a father who's like an imperialist, massacred plenty of people to build his empire. And you're sort of dealing with that in this movie too, where the gods are really terrible people. So Thor is sort of learning to be an actual god, like the gods that you want when you worship someone, the gods that you think of. He answers their prayers, and so
the gods that we see in Omnipotent City.
Yeah, those gods, like plenty of those, are just worthless, and they just are completely self-indulgent. In the same way,
Flick.
Like Thor has the same problem with the gods that Gorr does. and it is an
That's
interesting
a
parallel
really
there.
good point.
And also, there's a foil too with Gore and Jane Foster,
Yeah.
being that he picks the sword because he knows it'll kill him, but he'll be able to, get his vengeance. Jane picks the sword to love, essentially, to protect, and to, I guess in some ways, to not die just on a deathbed, which is very depressing. But at the end, she picks up the Mjolnir and she dies because of it to protect Thor. So I think there's good parallels. And also, given that he lost his hammer, dealing with that part of him, this is another extension that Taika is exploring.
Oh my God, the hammer pulled you off.
This is something that I definitely wanted to bring up. I realized it shortly before Christian Bale's character mentioned it in the film, of that foil between Gore and Jane Foster, and so Gore's basically told in the opening scene that you should not have faith in the gods, that there is nothing for you afterwards, and that faith will not save you. Whereas Jane basically does put her faith in the gods to get healed. And while it does not save her, she does now apparently get to live in Valhalla. So is Disney saying you should live your life by blind faith to religious devotion?
Obviously,
trying to get back some of that don't say gay stuff they lost.
I think it was less faith. I think she goes to Valhalla because she didn't have faith in the gods necessarily. She had faith in one god, Thor. And so
just the one god.
True.
It's faith in person. I feel like it's more faith in love than it is faith in gods. And her sacrifice for an Asgardian.
It's faith in love and faith in thunder.
Faith in thunder.
So what did you guys think of, since we're talking about Jane, what do you think of her worthiness? Is she worthy, or is it just the enchantment on Mjolnir?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it probably is, more the enchantment that Thor put onto it than anything else. But I don't think that should discount the fact that she is doing exceptional work and that she very well could actually be worthy. But the way that it was explained in the movie, I would say that I would have to argue that it's more the enchantment than anything else.
Yeah.
Because in the comics, she becomes worthy. It's explicit.
Yeah.
She's going through the cancer treatment and she becomes
I'm
worthy.
going to say this. I think, given that Thor sort of half put on an enchantment and didn't put on a big boy enchantment, I'm guessing that
whosoever
she
holds
is
this hammer
worthy too. I assume she has to be. It's like the hammer will look out for her, but she can't wield it and use the powers without being worthy. I think she does show that she's worthy through this movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
She fights for random people that she has no idea and dies for Thor, but also going to save those random Asgardian children.
And Natalie Portman hops back into the role without missing a beat.
Oh yeah.
And she hops into Taika's world of Thor really, really well.
I feel like Jane Foster was one of the elements I like the most. I feel like her inclusion and her, I don't know. I feel like it was great. Like, I wasn't expecting to be like, wow, it's great to see Jane again, but it's great to see Jane again, honestly. It's like, there's this retroactive relationship that we didn't actually see that nonetheless genuinely adds to Thor's character, I feel.
And nice to see Eric and Darcy. They were such huge parts of the first two Thor movies that
also
they've gone off and done their own things, but it's nice to see
guy
them back.
and that guy acknowledged in this film.
Oh yeah, the Warriors 3.
Of course they go and Sif has her own scene, but the rest of them are just like, oh yeah, they died.
I needed
whoever that guy was
just being there, or is she just?
I think that guy got recast.
I needed more Sif, and I needed more Guardians. I think the final battle would have been more exciting for me, at least as a fan, if it had been Thor, Jane, Valkyrie, Korg, Meek, Sif, and the Guardians. And
to a certain degree, it would have been more fun, but I definitely agree with the choice in that this is a much more personal story. in that all of these people, even
It's a personal
Valkyrie,
story, but we're seeing all of these people fighting in the battle who we've never seen before.
like who? Like who?
Heimdall's son, for one.
The children, you mean?
Yeah, shocking.
Oh, the children. Okay, well, yeah, but that's just sort of like, oh, there's children here. Okay, I mean, they're not really main characters. There's 50 of them. You probably don't even know more than half of their names.
I'm sorry, but the floating head.
My apologies.
The floating head has become such a meme on Twitter right now.
The floating head.
Wait, which one?
This is a $250 million movie.
I refuse.
It was so Phantom Menace.
Wait,
with that CGI.
I will defend the floating head. I know exactly what he was going for.
Oh my gosh, wait, I need to find this. Like, that's hilarious.
No. When Axel first talks to Thor.
Yeah, when he talks.
Duh, right.
I don't know. It was straight out of like, Tron or something when they see the what is it, the master computer. Yeah, like just a big, bad CGI floating head. But he said he based it on a bunch of 80s movies and 80s movies trailers. So
yeah, there were a lot of references.
That was clearly
implicit
like,
and explicit.
Yeah, I don't think they really just messed it up.
Yeah, this was Taika, clearly taking inspiration from 80s movies.
Oh, and also,
I'm just saying,
the original Thor
didn't entirely work for me.
I'm going to point this out. If you look up whatever his name, Kurt Russell's character in
Ego.
Ego, the Living Planet's character in Big Trouble in Little China. He's got the same shirt. Or not the same shirt, but like very similar outfit.
Wait, you mean Kurt Russell?
I don't think that's a coincidence because he said that movie was a big influence on Ragnarok. So
wait, what shirt?
And it is a cheesy 80s movie.
When Thor is fighting just on his own at the beginning with the Guardians just like all standing and
he
watching.
Takes off the robe and then he's got that 80s.
Oh man, I'm pissed outfit. I missed that. Oh my gosh. Like I just the
shirt's got like a big red, something. It looks very similar.
You can see it in the trailer, Declan. I think it's in like
I just didn't make the connection. Yeah. Like I'm annoyed with myself. So because Big Trouble in China is great. Highly recommended.
Lo Pan also I think was an influence for Mandarin's design. The chicken dish.
Didn't surprise me.
So
but yeah.
What did you guys think of, there are a couple of sequences that I want to talk about. What did you guys think of Omnipotent City?
I was disappointed that Yahweh wasn't the head of the gods.
Don't say his name.
If we're talking about gods that were disappointed weren't featured, Khonshu.
No. See, that's the thing is that I think that was on purpose. You don't see Khonshu or any of those gods because these are clearly the gods that abandon everyone to go have orgies.
There is that's a good point, but there is a
Bao. I like Bao.
Yeah,
Bao's there for the orgies, man.
There's apparently, and this is just me remembering off the top of my head, but apparently there was a plan to have the Council of Gods in Moon Knight talk about Gore the God Butcher.
Ooh.
And that was scrapped from the story. But I don't know if I was expecting a crossover or a mention, but to not have it feels like, some way to connect. We've been talking about the absence of connections to the greater story. That would have been, at least an Easter egg.
So I see what you're saying. I just, I'm like at this point in phase 4, I'm kind of the belief like, okay, connect where it should, right? Connect where it will actually further the story. I mean, like
that's
at
true.
This point, we're all kind of accustomed to the little Easter eggs and everything, and you can have those, right? I'm not saying take them out, but just having them for the sake of having them, it feels a little bit cheapened. I mean,
you're right in that phase 4 has been really cameo heavy.
Yeah.
Even looking at the early phases, like there wasn't a ton of stuff that would like connect everything. It's like, oh, Nick Fury shows at the end, post-credits scene. So I think it's unreasonable. Like people are expecting so much given what we've had. And we had Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, and then we had like
No Way Home.
No Way Home was, sort of, but that was really an isolated story too. Like as much as it did deal with, Doctor Strange, the multiverse, it really was just a Peter Parker story.
Yeah.
And a Peter Parker story and a Peter Parker story.
And I think that makes, but I think that makes a better film. You know, if you have too many connections, it becomes really diluted. Like the plot, yeah, sure, it may connect in lots of different ways. It's like cool to see, but I do think it makes for a worse movie. I enjoy Multiverse, and I enjoyed this movie because they're 2 hours and they feel 2 hours. You have your plot, it moves along. It never feels like it's milking, you know, the moment too much.
This one was paced and edited poorly, in my opinion. I feel like it was over.
Yeah,
It was
it
over
is-
right after it started. Multiverse
it
of
is
Madness
a
didn't feel that
bit
way for me, and it's
weird.
only 7 minutes longer. But
Yeah.
this one was. It just felt like it would have benefited from an extra 15.
I will disagree with that only because the movie that I saw before this was Elvis, which felt like 4.5
Yeah, we
hours.
did too.
This felt like under 2, like under an hour and a half. So I really appreciate.
Here comes Santa Claus.
Yeah, to all the viewers, Aidan watches every movie that we watch, and he just watches the episodes so that he can understand our thoughts in advance.
Not just coincidence, but yeah, I haven't talked about my thoughts on this too much. I didn't love it as much as the three of you guys did, but God, did I like it a lot more than Elvis.
That's
Sorry, gods.
a lower bar to jump over than, like, you know, that's almost
Yeah, it is a low
I
bar.
suppose I'm also very used to strange pacing. I enjoy it sometimes. Like I know, George, you didn't like the pacing of Blade Runner. I enjoy the pacing of Blade Runner. So
Blade Runner is your favorite
Blade
movie of all
Runner
time.
is
Yeah.
slow, but it's deliberate. I feel like Thor: Love and Thunder's pacing issues aren't deliberate per se. You know?
I don't know. I think it is kind of deliberate. It feels very Taika in the way that like there's a melding of genres. You have like Gore who takes out all the color, and then you've got like
The
literally
Shadow Realm was
rainbows.
Dope.
Yeah.
In the Bifrost. Also, I do want to point out we get a ship scene with a Viking. You don't get many of those because you can just fly around, but it was nice to see finally, you know, a Viking scene, 2 Vikings talking one-on-one on a ship.
Ship pulled by goats.
I mean, he was
Yeah,
basically Santa Claus.
He was basically Santa Claus
My God.
and Mrs. Claus.
Well done, Max.
And Snowman?
But I don't know. I do find the pacing like strange. I get what you mean, but I don't find it off-putting. I somewhat enjoy it. I don't know. Maybe it's not deliberate, but it works for me. But because it also reminds me of just so many 80s movies that I wouldn't want changed at all. Like, I think it's a 90s movie, but what's the
No, X-Men Dark Phoenix is a 90s movie.
No, the Connor McLeod. I don't not Excalibur.
Charlie St. Cloud and Zac
Highlander.
Efron.
Yeah, Highlander.
Yes, that's what I said.
Yeah, Highlander. Like that's also a terribly paced movie, but I wouldn't want it changed at all because I just love it the way it is.
Highlander is a unique film.
And I don't know, it's like a weird thing where I can't judge Thor: Love and Thunder. It's just like objectively good. It reminds me so much of the 80s films that he clearly used as inspiration to the point that I love it. I love all those films. Even if they're like 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, I love them. You know,
Staying
Ben's
alive.
trying to pick his favorite child.
okay, well, that's not.
So it came up briefly just a couple minutes ago when Ben mentioned how Gore's presence in the Shadow Realm takes away all the color. Aidan, you mentioned it, the rainbows with the Bifrost, or someone mentioned it. The Ben, of course. The Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, so much color in New Asgard that really wasn't there when we saw it in Endgame. Which is a credit to Taika for maximizing the space. And then you get the Shadow Realm, black and white.
That was awesome.
It's
So
sick.
cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially to how jagged the terrain was to give you those extra shadows that Gore could play with. Yeah. I as a villain and just as like his whole aesthetic, I thought they did a fantastic job with Gore. And that was, I mean, along with Christian Bale's performance, one of my favorite parts of the movie.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
I really loved
fun.
his like comical and like gothic performance. I mean, it was like a mix. You know, he was having a blast doing it. I could tell. And he got to use his actual accent. He doesn't
Yeah.
get to do that often.
Yeah,
How often does Christian Bale speak in his natural voice?
Not very often.
almost never.
Same
I
amount
think-
that Andrew Garfield speaks in his natural voice.
That is also true.
I think one of the strengths of what Christian Bale brought to this character is what's been a strength of a lot of Phase 4 villains. Whether it's, you know, He Who Remains in Loki, or whether it's drawing a blank here, which is not a good thing, but
even Green
Wenwu.
Goblin.
Wenwu
Like-
in Shang-Chi or the Green Goblin / Norman Osborn. Even Arthur Harrow has some qualities that, you know, he thinks he's doing the right thing in a way that's more of a gray area than what we've seen in, you know,
You're also
Whiplash in the first
you're
phase.
missing one thing with all those characters too. Not only are they trying to do the right thing, but they're being manipulated by a greater power. Like with Gore, he's got the Necrosword that's basically corrupting him. You've got the
Yeah.
Darkhold corrupting Wanda. You've got the Ten Rings, who giving him power, and then you've got the big demon dragon. I don't really
Dweller in
remember what that
Darkness.
was. Yeah, Dweller in Darkness. You know, sort of manipulating Wenwu, and Arthur Harrow being manipulated by
Amit.
Yeah, Amit.
And you've got time manipulating He Who Remains.
That's true.
No,
And
it's,
even the
it's Miss
Eternals.
Minutes. It's Miss Minutes
The Eternals are getting
influencing.
manipulated.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
everyone's being manipulated by higher powers.
But I think
Uh,
that what Christian Bale brought, not only an incredibly strong performance and probably a top 5 villain in the MCU for me, but it's just such a nuanced, you know, almost sympathetic trait that a lot of these Phase 4 villains have had. And he's not only the latest entry, but probably the strongest entry in that arena, where you're seeing someone who, at the outset of the film, wants to do right by his daughter,
And he does do right at the
has
end.
faith. Number 2, has faith in his, you know, in his gods. And number 3, only takes on this higher purpose because, Ben, as you just said, he's being corrupted. So you've got all of these different layers that are, you know, behind and underneath the surface for Gore. And that just amplifies, or that is amplified rather, by the strength of Christian Bale's performance, where you see all of these layers come to the forefront through his words and his actions in both a funny way, because he has genuinely funny moments, but also really sinister and creepy.
Mhm.
And I think Christian Bale walks that balance, and Taika Waititi walks that balance really, really well to create this great character.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that, like, as I said, he does do right at the end. His prison is sort of his own faith. Like in the beginning, he's a prisoner to Rapu, where he puts all his faith in that, and Rapu will never save him. And then he goes, and it is very empathetic too, because you go and see how his god demeans him and basically laughs at him for like losing everything he has because of his faith. But then he also sort of gives his faith to his new mission, a new promise, like he calls it a promise in the beginning, which is to the Necrosword. Because clearly, we don't know what that is, but that some entity clearly wants all the gods to die. And he chooses to, chooses his daughter instead of his faith.
At Thor's
he's-
push.
But he does free himself. He could have wished for what he was fighting for the whole movie. It was right there. But he chose something else.
So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had actually 2 other things, one related to that and one that's totally different, maybe we can come back to later. But I also just wanted to reference, like, kind of in regards to what I had said earlier about kind of that dichotomy between Jane and Gore choosing like faith in the gods or in love or whatever, versus Gore kind of abandoning it and taking revenge. And that this kind of like turning away from a god or gods or whatever because of suffering is like it's obviously like a exaggerated like comic book version of it, but it is like a real issue that a lot of people come up with when faced with tremendous suffering in the world. So, especially whether that's famine or your child dying or getting cancer, is a very very real issue that affects or that shakes the faith of a lot of religious people around the world, and I assume has for probably all of humanity, as long as humanity is.
And it is very what's the word? Nordic in terms of like Greek myths, plenty of myths with the gods have these characters where even in the mythology, some gods are just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the stories of the Titans eat their own children. So I feel like it does fit in with that there are so many of these gods that are terrible, but there are also some good ones, like Thor. And we'll see who else. I guess
And
Concha's
the
not so
Cronin
bad.
god that Korg shouts out.
I don't know, man. He was there.
Hey,
He
man.
might just be there for the orgy.
True.
That was the #1 agenda item.
That was like
for their
the only
discussion
agenda
was-
item.
Yeah. it
Also, wait,
was
speaking of which, how have we not talked about Russell Crowe as Thor?
Yeah.
That's true.
How have we not talked about this?
Probably the biggest like what the fuck moment was when Valkyrie, did the thing with the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Didn't Thor throw it?
No, it was Thor that threw
It was Thor that threw it? Are you sure?
Yeah, he empowers it with
Oh,
lightning.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, that's thunder.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess he was fine in the end, but
MCU movie without a one-liner.
Yeah.
Eat my hammer.
Oh well, I guess I did a thing.
that happened. Or just kidnapped a bunch of children,
But
Yeah,
Russell
so-
Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe was pretty great.
It was fun. He was super
Yeah.
Italian, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah,
He was not Italian.
It was great.
Super
That was
Italian.
Greek.
Yeah.
the accent,
that is-
the accent was Italian. And
No,
you cannot
he-
convince me otherwise.
The accent was not Italian.
Right. I feel like it wouldn't make sense for him to be Italian if he was.
It wouldn't make sense for him to be Italian, but I'm just saying the accent sounded Italian to me.
It wasn't a fantastic accent, but
No, it was like a.
It was like a
vaguely
weird
Greek
mix.
accent.
Yeah, it was a weird mix.
I wouldn't say it's Italian though.
Okay, wow, you're all coming after me. I guess it was
just-
a really
he's
bad
one of
Greek
you Greek
accent.
I would also say it doesn't matter.
As it works.
Yeah,
It
he
was
was
just
he was fun. I liked
was great.
his character in there. I mean, it was really just a glorified cameo, but
A little bit, yeah. It's cool. It's cool that he's in it, though. It's also like I think it's a little bit like it's a little bit too bad that Zeus it wouldn't have fit for the story, but it's also like I feel like Zeus is like unfortunately is in that weird gray area between basically a cameo and like supporting character, and they can't quite bring him to just be one or the other. And I mean it's fine, like it still works and all that, but I almost wish he could have either been a more substantial supporting player or B just been like just been like a minor character. I don't know. It's like
Well, he does his job though. Like
True,
he's there to
exactly.
basically show, I am the mightiest and most well-known god. I am an asshole. I care about orgies only. And look at me with my lightning bolt. And then he gives the lightning bolt over. And you realize, yeah. And then they leave. So I don't know. It kind of works. I can't
And
really
then
complain
the-
that much.
mid-credit scene.
Yeah, and then Hercules shows up.
Hey,
So
here's
obviously-
Thor 5.
And
Kevin Feige will see you at Comic-Con in a couple months when you announce
Yeah,
Thor 5.
Hercules, Thor team up. First they'll fight for 5 minutes, and then they'll team up, have a little buddy comedy.
probably once they realize their mother is supposed to have the same name.
Declan, I think when we finally get to your favorite movie, because we did Blade Runner a few weeks ago, when we finally get to your favorite movie, I think we're just going to pull the rug out from under you and talk about Batman v Superman.
that wouldn't surprise me one bit,
I'm happy to come back for that one. So.
And we're not going to talk about the Ultimate Edition. We're talking about the theatrical version.
Oh, even
Ooh.
better.
Oh no.
Which,
All right,
should we just do
guys.
Justice League? I don't know.
Final thoughts on Thor Love and Thunder before we get to our big announcement that I didn't remember to tease at the beginning of the episode.
Ooh.
The last thing that I wanted to just say was that ultimately I really enjoyed the story between Jane and Thor.
Mhm.
And I think that absent all the Marvelness of it, it was still a good, not quite rom-com, but chick flick feels derogatory, but that's basically the category I would put it into, of like two people who had grown apart coming back and learning to love each other again, even if it costs them and makes them sad. And one or both of them growing from that. I could definitely see that, just even with those same two actors playing regular humans being a show. So I certainly enjoyed that aspect of the show, and that final sequence of Thor being a dad hit me harder than I expected it to, and I really enjoyed that. Although
Pan flaps.
I did not realize that Gore's daughter was actually named Love until I read the Wikipedia article this morning.
Me too.
So that.
Yeah, I also didn't realize until after.
Okay. So that's
and she was played. She was played by Hemsworth's daughter.
Oh, really?
She's adorable.
Oh, wow.
Hemsworth's son played a little Thor when he's growing up.
Oh, that's funny. Like, yeah, when his mother's carrying him, like, during the battle.
Or no, that's
no, the kid Thor when he's like running
in the montage.
I see.
older.
Oh, that's cool. So that's
Let
cool.
me tell you, space Viking, Thor Odinson.
Some people may call me the villain of this story.
Oh my god!
How many Elvis quotes can we work into this episode?
It's gonna be
5 minutes.
Not enough.
For the rest of the world. Morbius is the meme. For us, it's gonna be Elvis.
Amen to that.
I mean,
when Black Adam comes out, we are only talking about Elvis again. Because it has the Rock of Eternity as seen in Elvis.
Yeah, the Rock of Eternity. Will we see the Rock of Eternity? Who knows?
So yeah, my final thoughts. It's not as good as Ragnarok. It's worlds better, no pun intended, than the first two Thor movies. I think I've grown used to the cameos and the Easter eggs that, I think pepper a lot of phases 3 and 4 of the MCU, especially phase 4, what we've seen recently. But at the same time, I said this after my second viewing of Multiverse of Madness, and that's another viewing will really make me appreciate this film for what it is rather than what I had hoped it would be. And what this film is, and what I can say based on one viewing of it, is that this is a really good film. It has its flaws. There are issues with CGI and editing and pacing, but the performances are strong across the board. The story slaps. The score and soundtrack are incredible. The action sequences are fantastic. The use of color is absurd. It's a really, really well-made film when you get down to the bottom line. And so, yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder, it's not top 10 in the MCU, but it's pretty damn close.
It also is.
I'm really excited to see this one again. I'm probably going to do it in the next, couple of weeks while it's still in theaters. Worth seeing multiple times in theaters, I think.
100%.
If you have the means.
It's a movie about the elite manipulating the poor.
We must seize the means of production.
So yeah, pro-communist movie, obviously.
Yeah.
With all the 80s references, are you sure?
Hey, Big Trouble in Little actually, I don't really know what that is. I guess I don't know. They're American Chinese, so it's not really communist. They're into magic, though. They need to get together to do that. I don't know.
But no, what I was gonna say is I definitely like feel what you're saying about like what I wanted the movie to be rather than what it was. Like I can't deny that I feel like I wanted more from it. But I also do feel that there are elements in this film that are, some of the best in the MCU. Like again, Christian Bale as Gore, being the prime example. Though again, I also genuinely liked Thor and Jane Foster's relationship. And so I am hopeful that if I see this one again, like hopefully those those good elements stand out to me more than like my disappointments. Like, you know, kind of. It's still good. Good for me. It was disappointing though, just in comparison to, you know, the predecessor Ragnarok and that sort of thing. You know, that's what
Yeah. I think just a final thought. I enjoyed the movie. There are certain things you can criticize. And yeah, it isn't as good as Ragnarok, but Ragnarok's like a top Marvel film. You know, some people have it as their number one. It's kind of tough to reach that level. But also, I think with Phase 4, a lot of these films have suffered from expectations, which is, I cannot judge a film for what it is not. I have to judge it for what's in the film.
Exactly.
So I feel like that's something that, you know, I constantly have in the back of my head, which is if I have expectations for a Marvel film, if it does not fulfill them, I can't knock the film if the film still works for me.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you say that in Old Norse?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone just said, and especially with what Ben just said about not being able to judge a film based off of what it isn't. It's really hard to do, especially coming out of phases 1, 2, and 3, where like expectations were sky high from each project to the next, and then entering phase 4 with the addition of TV shows, and sort of the new medium and a new way of telling stories. And I think like expectations are still going to be high. We expect high quality production and high quality storytelling, but when it comes to the actual content, I think this film absolutely delivers. It's a lot of fun. It really is worth seeing just for Christian Bale. Like if everything else was not a great, made it not a great film, I would still recommend you go see it for Christian Bale. But that's not the case. It is a really good film. It's a tight 2 hours. It feels like 2 hours. I also fall into George's camp where I kind of wish it was a little bit longer, a little bit more time. Just, you know, because I was having fun. So
Yeah.
absolutely go see it, and hope you enjoy it. George?
Yeah. So my little spiel here at the end before we get to the announcement that I teased 5 minutes ago. Thor: Love and Thunder is currently playing in movie theaters. No word yet when it'll be on Disney Plus, but I think it's worth seeing it on the big screen. I think we all do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really fun ride, so definitely check it out. And now, drum roll, big announcement time. The Unqualified Film Bros with the addition of Aidan, who is here, and our buddy Chip, who is, you know him from Shout at the Plate. We're all going to be in person for our next episode. Bunch of us are taking the trek down to Washington, D.C. Max is going to go across town. And we're all going to hang out. We don't really know what the structure of the episode is going to be. We're thinking movie trivia, maybe some elements of funky film reviews. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. We're going to play some games. We're going to have a really good time, all being in person, hanging out, talking over each other without having to worry about saying, oh, what did you, no, you just, and I, so
Staying alive again? No.
Morbius?
So
Morbius?
Elvis. Let's talk Elvis again.
Odd, lonely children.
So
there were some odd and lonely children in Love and Thunder.
Yes, there
that
were.
is true.
Now we've got a name for this episode of Unqualified Film Bros. Lots of lonely Asgardian children reaching for eternity. There it is.
Reaching for the rock of eternity.
I think Gore was the only one that was reaching for eternity.
We're going with it. We're still going with it.
We're going with it. It's decided. Yeah, so we'll see you in Washington, D.C. next week when we're all in person, and we'll see how I edit that together. I mean, how our editor edits that together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Our very well compensated editor.
We pay him a lot.
We're a really professional.
He's a good guy. Yes. All right. Until next week. Have a good one.
Good night.